Hi everyone, it's Dragon Critic aka Leo O'Brien, and today I'm going to be seeing Minions 2 The Rise of Gru with my good friend Tig. So as for my thoughts on the previous movies, the first two Despicable Me movies are really good, they're very funny and very well made movies. Despicable Me 3 though, sucked and is easily the worst of the bunch. The first Minions film I absolutely loved when I first saw it on my school trip back in June 2015 when it first came out, and while I don't quite like it as much as I did it when I was a kid, I would say it's a decent film, but that's about it. My expectations for Rise of Gru are for it to at least be entertaining and maybe on par or slightly better than the first movie. So I shall now be off to the cinema. Okay, we are here. Okay, let's see how Minions 2 The Rise of Gru is. Minions 2 The Rise of Gru was released in 2022 and was directed by Kyle Balda. It tells the story taking place after the first Minions movie back in the 1970s, as Gru is trying to join a group of supervillains. Unfortunately, things don't end up working and Gru and the Minions are on the run from these villains, but along the way Gru gets kidnapped and the Minions receive training from a Kung Fu master. So today I saw Minions 2 with my friend Tig. My friend Tig, he thought it was okay. For me, I thought the movie was pretty good actually. It was decent. It's not great though. The story, there were a few callbacks and references to the other movies, which actually were very creative, and I suppose the Minions learning Kung Fu is something we've never seen before, and I suppose turning into animals in the climax is kind of cool, but the storyline, it's very stale. It's one of those stories where you watch it and you go, you can really tell Illumination has really run out of ideas with the Despicable Me franchise. They don't know what they want to do and where to take it. And I honestly think that's why this franchise is becoming played out and has to stop. I'm not saying Minions 2 is a bad movie. Like I said, it is a decent, enjoyable film. But the story, it just was very stale. And a lot of it didn't really, I don't know, like it wasn't bad, but you could just tell they're running out of ideas. It's starting to become not as interesting, not as exciting as it once was. However, I honestly believe this should have been the plot of the first movie. I honestly would have scrapped Minions 1 and just make Minions 2, this exact same film. This should have been Minions 1. I honestly think, because back then, when the first Minions movie came out 2015, the Minions were more relevant. I think if this film was released back then, instead of, if this was the first Minions, The Rise of Gru, it honestly would have worked better. Because it's more connected to Despicable Me than the first one. I actually dare say this is actually better than the first Minions movie in my book. It's not as good as the first two Despicable Me's, but it's much better than the third Despicable Me. It's just, I think this movie would have been a lot better if it released 7 years ago. I just think this should have been Minions 1. They shouldn't have made Minions 1 this story about Scarlet Overkill and the Minions. This should have been the first film. It really should have, because it's more, like I said, it's more connected to Despicable Me. So there's some fun action and, there is some funny humour, but the story, it's not great and it is very stale. The animation, though, was really good. Really good. I was very impressed by the animation. The textures, the locations, the special effects, the animal designs at the climax even. Very creative stuff. I think this movie looks gorgeous. It visually does look very nice. And I think visually, this is the best looking in the Despicable Me franchise. I think it's just, visually, it's gorgeous. It's a beautiful looking movie. It actually is really impressive on the animation side. And the characters, they've honestly started to become less interesting. Gru is good enough in the film. He's just not quite as smart as he was in the first two Despicable Me movies, but he's decent for who he is in this film, and there is some funny scenes with him. The Minions themselves are fine. They're honestly the same as they are in the other films, just comedic, lovable side characters. They actually don't have as much focus in this film as they did in the first movie, which is quite surprising actually. The Kung Fu Master was okay. She wasn't really that interesting, nor is she actually in the movie as much as the trailers made it seem. The Vicious Six aren't really interesting characters. They have very creative designs, but they're just generic evil villains and not really all that interesting. Wild Knuckles is such a generic character, and we've seen this kind of character hundreds of times before. He's not bad, but he's really not that good of a character. So it's not to say the characters were bad. It's just they've started to become less interesting than they once were. The music of the movie was pretty decent. They actually remade some of the songs you would hear in the first Despicable Me, and I thought that was kind of a nice touch. Some of the other music tracks are kind of the same as you would get in the other films. Well, the music is still pretty decent. So I think this is a decent film. It's a good kids film. It's worth at least one watch, but it's not great. And it's really shown to me Despicable Me is becoming dragged out now. Overall, Minions 2, while is better than the first one and much better than the third Despicable Me, it's good but not great. The story has become stale and the characters are becoming less interesting. The animation is really good and the music is still pretty decent, but the Despicable Me franchise has become really played out now, and I honestly feel the more movies it'll receive, they're just going to dip in quality. I'm going to give Minions 2 The Rise of Gru a 7 out of 10. So yeah, I honestly don't think they should make another one of these. Okay, if you're gonna do Despicable Me 4, which it's coming out July 2024, make that the last one. Because I honestly think it's gonna go the Shrek and Ice Age direction, where you make so many of them, and they start to dip in quality. Because Despicable Me 1 was a really good movie. Despicable Me 2, even better. You know, it became huge, like the Minions were so popular. The Minions movie was still good. It wasn't quite as good as the first two Despicable Me movies. Despicable Me 3 came out in 2017, which was awful. And that kind of killed the franchise. The franchise's popularity really died down. Minions 2 is fun, decent, but it's not great. And I think the franchise needs to stop before it becomes bad. Because I can honestly see these movies becoming cash grabs only made for the money. And they care less about quality, and they only care about the money. So, that was it for my review for Minions 2, The Rise of Gru. Stay tuned for my next review, which is going to be on Thor Love and Thunder. I'm very excited to see it. I hope it's a good movie. I'm going in very optimistic, so hopefully it's good. Stay tuned for that review. Until then, thank you for watching. Take care, guys, and skadoosh.